right, all right. Good day, everybody. I'm Mark David Smith, and I'm here with Yossi. And Yossi, I've got our intro and outro changed. It now says Jesus, the Scribal Pharisee.
Baruch Hashem.
All right.
Very good. We did it. It took a while, but we got there. So, Baruch Hashem. So, Jesus, the Scribal Pharisee, and we're emphasizing Scribal Pharisee. So, I think we just do a recap on the different types of Jew mentioned in the New Testament so that people understand why we've chosen Scribal Pharisee. Jesus appointed the Scribal Pharisees, those who are Pharisees and scribes, or those who are both scribes and Pharisees, not just scribes, not just Pharisees. He appointed those who are both as the ultimate authority over his church on earth. And I know that sounds confusing to Christians who might have thought that he appointed Peter as the ultimate authority and that Pope in Rome or the Vatican is actually the ultimate authority of his church on earth, or that the apostolic succession of your bishops might be the ultimate authority of God's church on earth, of Jesus's church specifically on earth, or that it was actually something to do with those who are baptized or something like that. And it's Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, verses 2 to 3, and he appoints the scribes and the Pharisees, those who are both scribes and Pharisees. It would mean Scribal Pharisees would say in modern English rather than just those who are both scribes and Pharisees. It's a bit of a mouthful. So he criticized those who were just Pharisees alone, those who were not also into writing down the oral Torah. Those were ones who were just Pharisees, and we would call them today, in modern day English, we would call them Karaites. Some people will say, wait a second, no, Karaites reject the oral Torah. That might be what modern Neo-Karaites do. And Neo-Karaites are basically Sadducees who would prefer to call themselves Karaites than Sadducees because Sadducees are a particular kind of a heretic. But the Karaites were never opposed to the oral Torah, and we've got plenty of academic sources which prove that the Karaites always followed the oral Torah, but they refused to write it down. They were not scribal Pharisees. They were just regular Pharisees. And then you had the scribes, like Ezra the scribe and Josephus the scribe. These scribes were just people who wrote down the history of the Jewish people, the history of Judaism. And the inheritors of that tradition today are Jewish historians. Anybody who is a historian writing down the chronicles of Jewish history are all part of the scribal tradition. They're all scribes. And Jesus didn't say great things about the scribes either, but he talked about a scribe who could bring out treasures, hidden treasures. And so that was one of the things which he said about one of the nice things. So you got that verse?
Actually, I'm looking through all of Matthew 23.
Yeah.
And I mean, the entire chapter is woe to you, scribes and Pharisees.
Hypocrites.
And I mean, from the very first verse, the one that you referred to on 23, I think, is woe to you, scribes and Pharisees.
Yeah.
You hypocrites, you pay tithes of mint, dill, and cumin. But
no, read verse 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, I will. The scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat.
Yeah.
So practice and observe everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach.
Right.
Of course, you've heard that one verse on this show at least 40 times.
Yeah.
Because Yossi has brought this verse up.
And this is the verse which is used as there's like an anti-Semitism against. It's like but you have to think carefully. What is Jesus an idiot? Did he tell people to obey the scribes and the Pharisees because they sit in Moses' seat, and he wants you to obey them because they're hypocrites? Then no. Jesus is a moron. Frankly speaking, that's what it means, right. And that's the translation which is given to people, and people are just kind of gloss over the fact that Jesus is being an idiot here. If he's telling you obey them, and then he's attacking the very same people. Or if the translation means that, obey these people, but don't do what they do because they're hypocrites, then you're in trouble. But listen, let's just remind people The word hypocrite means actor. That's what it meant in Greek. In modern European languages, the word hypocrite means somebody who says one thing and does another. And the reason why it means that in modern European languages, not just English, this is a European language, obviously. Americans are speaking a European language. The reason why it means somebody who says one thing but practices another is because of the anti-Semitic hegemony of the Christian church, which says a hypocrite is somebody who, as defined in this verse in the beginning of Matthew chapter 23, verses 2 and 3, because they try to undermine the fact that Jesus of Nazareth appointed the Scribal Pharisees as the head of his church. So they're trying to defend themselves, the Catholic Church, as the head of the church, the bishops, the priests, the Pope, cardinals. And in order to promote that, there has been 2,000 years of promoting the idea that Matthew chapter 23, verse 2 and 3 refers to hypocrites. But no, because that would mean Jesus is a moron. That would mean Jesus is an idiot, that he's some kind of hypocrite himself, because he wants you to obey the hypocrites. No, what he's saying is, he says, obey the scribes and the Pharisees. They sit in Moses' seat, but don't practice Judaism as a Jew, because what they preach to you, my Edah, the crowds, the Erev Rav, the rabble, to those who are not in the Kehillah, okay, what they preach to you is different from what they practice themselves. I say, do the 7 laws of Noah. Don't do what I do. I say it all the time. But then he goes and criticizes the scribes and the Pharisees. Woe to you, scribes and the Pharisees, hypocrites. And what this is a bad translation of woe to you, hypocrites, scribes and Pharisees, which actually means not the way the Catholic Church has promoted the meaning of the past 2,000 years, and which is the Christian hegemony. That is the dominant view in the mind of every Christian. It is the Catholic view that Jesus is telling you to obey the scribes and the Pharisees, and they are hypocrites. What he's saying in plain, simple Koine Greek is hypocrite means actors. And so he's saying, woe to you, actor, scribes and Pharisees. That's what he says again and again. Beware of the actor, scribes and Pharisees. Beware of those who are acting, but they don't have the documentation to prove that they are scribes and Pharisees, or Pharisees. So that would mean, for example, I'm sorry, but that would be, for example, the Messianic Jewish rabbis, somebody who just appoints themselves as a rabbi for the people and calls himself a rabbi, Messianic Jew, and is putting on the tzitzit and putting on the whatever else they want to do, the talit, and doing all that, but they don't practice the oral Torah like a scribal Pharisee, and they are not recognized by the scribal Pharisees as a scribal Pharisee. They are acting as scribal Pharisees, and Jesus is saying, woe to you. And in another sense, also, he's saying, woe to the Orthodox Church Christian priests who dress up as first-century scribal Pharisees. Have you seen the way the Orthodox priests in the Russian Orthodox Church, and the Greek Orthodox Church, and the Serbian Orthodox Church, the way they dress? And they have these long robes in black, and they have this, and this is basically temple priesthood dressing. They're dressed up in the temple priesthood costume, but they're not temple priests. They're not recognized as temple priests. They're acting.
Actors, right?
They're actors. They're dressing up in costume. They're putting on a show. Okay, wow. So that you will be convinced and will follow them. And so Jesus is saying, woe to you, hypocrites, scribes and Pharisees. So there is a difference between a real scribal Pharisee and a false or actor, which is a hypocrite scribal Pharisee. And Messianic Hebrews really do, and this is a show for Messianic Hebrews, Messianic Hebrews really do need to snap out of this concept of hypocrite, which is defined by the Catholic Church as somebody who does what it says exactly in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, verse, I think it's verse 3, where he says, but do not do what they do, because they do not practice what they preach, right? That's a translation which is given, yeah? This definition of hypocrite is the Roman Catholic definition of hypocrite, and the Messianic Hebrew cannot afford to believe in that doctrine anymore. That is not the meaning of hypocrite as given in the Bible. That is a gloss, an attempt to wash over the meaning and to kind of make you believe something which is not what's written in the scripture. What's written in the scripture is obey these guys because they are going to do the same thing as Paul does. You know, Paul does exactly the same thing. He's circumcised. He calls himself a Pharisee. He goes and he uses the Pharisees to help him escape the punishment from the Sadducees. He repeatedly says, "I'm a Pharisee. I studied at the feet of Gamaliel in his letters, in his epistles." And yet he then goes around and he circumcises Timothy. And then he goes around, whose mother was a Jew, and he goes around and tells him, don't get circumcised, don't keep the law, don't do what the Pharisees do. It's like, so is he also a hypocrite then? Yeah, he's the archetypal hypocrite according to the Roman Catholic Church. He's exactly the Scribal Pharisee, writing. He's not a Pharisee who doesn't write. He's a Pharisee who writes it all. He's writing. He's a Scribal Pharisee. And he's saying, don't do what I do. I don't practice the same thing that I'm preaching to you. You must be enjoying the chen, the grace, which God has given you as Noahites, as Messianic Hebrews, and there is no Jew, and there is no Gentile. There's only Hebrew. That's basically what he's saying. There's no free, there's no slave, there's no male, there's no female, there's no Scythian, there's no Greek, there's no Jew. They're all Noahites. You're all simply Hebrews. That's your status that Paul is saying. And a Hebrew does not need to be circumcised, and a Hebrew does not need to keep all the law, but do the basics. Keep the moral law, as it's called in Christian doctrine, the moral law, but plus the moral law plus Sabbath. You do need to recognize Sabbath. And there's a verse in Paul where he says, I think I'm not sure exactly which is it, Galatians, and he's criticizing people saying it's the way it's translated is like he's saying, what are you doing observing Sabbaths and new moons and festivals? Why are you doing this? But if you read what it's actually saying in the Greek, he says, don't go and keep all the law, just observe the Sabbaths and festivals. That's it. But the way it's translated is, you're observing Sabbaths. Why? But he doesn't. He says imperative case, observe Sabbaths. That's all he says. It's imperative case, and it's Greek, Koine Greek, imperative. It's not a question. He's not asking, what are you doing? Why are you observing Sabbaths? He's actually doing imperative instruction. Observe Sabbaths. That's it. No more ceremonial law for you other than Sabbath. On Sabbath, keep kosher. On Sabbath, be holy. On Sabbath, do all of the ritual washing and everything. Like, do everything that you have to do on Sabbath. On Sabbath, wear your kippah, your talit, if you want to, but you don't wear the tzitzit, because the tzitzit, Jesus specifically said they like to lengthen their tassels. Don't wear the phylacteries, because again, Jesus specifically said don't do this. Phylacteries, that's for real Jews, Orthodox Jews. Tzitzit, that's for Orthodox Jews, because the time will come when 10 men or 10 people from amongst the nations of the world will hold on to the garment that is the tzitzit of he who is a Jew. And they will say, we'll follow you wherever you go because we have heard that God is with you. And this tzitzit is what they hold on to when they make the pledge to be a child of Noah, to be a Hebrew. We will follow you as God's priesthoods, as the scribes and the Pharisees who sit in the seat of Moses, wherever you go, because we've heard from Jesus that God is with you. That's the time that will come. That's the prophecy being fulfilled there. And so they follow them as Noahites. But everything else you can do, just what's your question?
Colossians 2:16 says, therefore do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to a religious festival, a new moon celebration, or Sabbath day. Now, a lot of people I know in the Messianic Jewish realm will use that to say, I can do all of these things, and you can't judge me for that, because it says don't let anybody judge what I eat or drink.
What it's
You
saying
know,
here
so I
is
can
like,
do these things.
yeah, don't let them judge you in the way that you as Noahides observe Sabbaths, because a Noahide is not supposed to observe a Sabbath exactly as an Orthodox Jew. There has to be a distinction between an Orthodox Jew, the Kehillah, and a Noahide observance of Sabbath. So, you know, the Kehillah, we're not supposed to turn on even the light switch or open the fridge with a light bulb inside on Sabbath. Yeah, but you wouldn't have to worry about stuff like that. That's and don't let anybody judge you and say, well, you're not observing Sabbath properly. You remind them, I'm a Noahide, I'm a Hebrew, I'm not a Jew, and I don't have to observe Sabbath the way you do. But you also have to say to them, because they might say, oh, you don't have to observe Sabbath at all. Stop observing Sabbath. We don't want you to observe Sabbath. You shouldn't observe Sabbath. And then you have to remind them that if I don't observe Sabbath, then I'm not one of God's people. The Sabbath is a gift. In the 10 Commandments, it says, and the ger, that is, means the Noahide who is amongst you, should also keep the holy Sabbath day. This is a commandment of God, and you must not allow yourselves to be judged by less educated Jews who might say, oh, you shouldn't be keeping the Sabbath. The Sabbath is for us. It's not for the non-circumcised people. You say, well, it says the Noahides the Sabbath is for the Noahides in the 10 Commandments. So I prefer to follow God than to believe your interpretation of that. And any Jew who says, well, no, you just have to obey the scribes and Pharisees, and I'm a scribe and I'm a Pharisee, and do as I say, and forget the Torah. I'm the one who's in Moses' seat, which might happen. There might be a day when people might start saying that. You have to say the scribes and the Pharisees existed in the time that the Talmud was written down. That Talmud is a dictation of the scribal Pharisees. And if I'm obeying the scribal Pharisee, then I'm obeying the Talmud, and I don't need to obey any modern day living Jew at all. There is no modern, and here me, Yossi, I'm saying, don't obey me. You know, I'm helping you to understand who the scribes and the Pharisees were, where your source for the source of water for the scribal Pharisees is the Talmud, it's the oral Torah, it's the Mishnah, it's all these things which were written down, because that's why Jesus said, obey the scribal Pharisees, because he knew it was going to be all written down. It was being written down in his time. They were starting to write it down. He said, this is your record. These guys are keeping the record straight. They're not going to start making up laws by themselves later. Because as time goes by, you find that there's more and more and more and more laws coming out of Judaism. For example, the Hasidic Jews have about 10,000 laws. 10,000 laws for the Hasidic Jews. And the Hasidic Jews have only been around for less than 300 years. So they've created more and more and more. Where do they get all these ideas from? They'll say, well, the oral Torah is passed down by the Baal Shem Tov or from our dynasty. And it's like, well, that's interesting, because wouldn't you think that the Baal Shem Tov would have written it all down? No. So they become more like, I would say, this is unfortunate, but they would become more like hypocrites, scribal Pharisees, people who are dressing up like the Litvak Perishim, but they are making a mountain out of a molehill. And they're the ones probably that Jesus is saying, well, woe to you, hypocrites. You're acting like a scribal Pharisee, but you're making so much. And if you want to, you could read out the passage now, because that would be like the Hasidic Jews. So if you would like, if you've still got it on your screen there, or I can actually open it up and read it. Actually,
which one do you want?
Matthew 23. We'll go through and remind people.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you. I think it's it. Let me reread from verse 2. The scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, so practice and observe everything they tell you, but do not
actually, you should start from verse 1, because in verse 1 it tells you who is Jesus speaking to. Yeah.
Then it's Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples.
And to his disciples. This is so important. He's speaking to the crowds, so the Erev Rav, the rabble, if you like, and he's speaking to his disciples. So he's not calling his disciples the rabble, but he's talking to the rabble and to his disciples. And he's saying, carry on.
It says, so practice and observe everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach.
Which is exactly what I'm saying.
Heavy, burdensome loads.
Give me a chance.
Yeah.
That's the end of passage 1. And they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy burdens. This is okay. we tell you do 7 laws of Noah, and we practice 613 laws. Yeah. So it's like we're literally doing that. And I'm not a hypocrite to say that's all you need to be saved. I'm going to do 613 laws, but off you go, just 7 for you. Do not do what I do. Just do what I tell you to do. This is example of even the Talmud is saying, the Noahide has to do 7 laws of Noah. And then the Talmud is all about these 613 laws. And you have to wonder, why is it saying 7 for me and 613 for them? And Jesus is just saying they have heavy burdens. They tie up heavy burdens. You can carry on with they tie up heavy burdens.
Yeah, that's verse 4. They tie up heavy burdensome loads and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them.
Absolutely. We will not lift a finger to remove the burdens of being an Orthodox Jew and observing 613 laws. It's tough. It's hard. Those laws have been tied up as a heavy burden, and if you're not prepared to lift it, then you don't deserve to be calling yourself a Jew. The Jews are the ones who are going to be carrying that heavy burden, and as a result of carrying that heavy burden, our ancestors got to sit in the seat of Moses. I won't say we get to sit in the seat of Moses, because Jesus said the Scribal Pharisees, the ones who wrote down the oral Torah, were the ones who got to sit in the seat of Moses. Not me. Do you know why not me? Because I don't write down the oral Torah. I read the oral Torah, which was written down for me 1,000 to 1,400 years ago, 1,500 years ago, 1,600 years ago. So I'm not one of those people, but they are the ones who have written it down. And it's tough. And they didn't lift a finger to help. And we don't change that either. It's tough. It's really tough. You can continue, please, Mark.
It's vital. Verse 5. All their deeds are done for men to see.
Exactly. Let's stop there.
Yeah.
Literally, what is the purpose of doing such a difficult thing? We're literally doing all of this because we're on display. We're literally on display for all people to see. We've been singled out to be a kind of a show, like an exhibition, an exhibit in a museum for people to see. And that is a burden, actually. It's not a pleasurable thing. The way it's written is making it look, oh, they want to, they do it all to be seen, rather than saying, actually, God, have given them 613 laws, and I only want you to do 7, but I gave them 613 laws because they are to be a spectacle. That's what we exist for. You can continue there.
They broaden their phylacteries and lengthen their tassels.
We are the ones who do that. We have broad phylacteries and lengthened tassels. But you, what does it say next?
They love the places of honor and banquets, the chief seats at the synagogue.
Yeah. It's a bit of a rotten translation. It means they are to enjoy the places of honor and chief seats in the synagogues. They are the ones who are supposed to get at the head of the table. They are the ones who are supposed to sit at the front of the synagogue. Not you, Jesus' disciples. Them, because they are the ones who sit. This is at his time, right? They are the ones who sit in the seat of Moses, and so you have to do and observe everything they do. And I want them to sit at the places of honor in the banquets, and I want them to have the chief seats in the synagogues, and I want them to have the greetings in the marketplace with the title of rabbi by which they are addressed. But I do not want you, my disciples, or the crowds, to call yourselves rabbi because you have one teacher. That's what he says.
All right. I'm changing my place here. So wait, give me a second. I just finished 5. Okay. It's okay. Verse 6.
Yeah.
They love the place of honor. Right? Oh, that's it. 7. Yeah. And they love being greeted differentially in the marketplaces and being called rabbi.
These are translations which are trying to make us look bad. But if you take it very simply, it means that they are to enjoy the places of honor in the banquets and the chief seats in the synagogues and the greetings in the marketplace and the title of rabbi by which they are addressed. They are to enjoy those things. Do not do what they do. Yeah, that's the way it translated. It's actually they are to enjoy those things. They say they love to. It's this very anti-Semitic interpretation of Jesus' words, and it's weird because Jesus is telling you to obey these guys, and then saying, "Oh, but they love this." It's like, well, why would you tell them? Why would you tell your disciples to obey them and then go and slander them or badmouth them? It has to mean something else. Do you see this? So I'm giving you a kind of a scribal pharisaical interpretation of this, obviously, but you're going to think, okay, Jesus can't be a moron. He can't be an idiot. He can't be slandering and telling his disciples to obey the people that he again goes on to slander. There has to be another meaning in this, and the scribal pharisaical meaning is that's right. He's saying these people are on display. These people are supposed to be at the front of the synagogue. These people are supposed to be at the head of the banquet. These people are supposed to be greeted in the marketplaces. They are the ones who sit in the seat of Moses. They have an unusual practice which is very difficult, and they're not going to lift a finger to make it easier for you. Don't even try to ask them to make it easy for you. This is a tough monastic lifestyle. If you think about monasticism, yeah, you take a vow and you must keep your vow, and you're not allowed to break your vow until you die. And that might be a vow of celibacy, and it might be a vow of silence. There might be many things that monasticism. Judaism is the original monasticism. It is an extremely difficult way of devotion, where you are not allowed to break these rules. This is your vows, and this is the way you have to live. And Jesus is saying, basically, I don't want you to be monks. This verse is the best argument against it. I don't want you to have a monastic lifestyle. I don't want you to live in such kind of a complex way. He then says in verse 8, you are not to be called rabbi.
That's right. Because you have one rabbi and you are all each other's brothers.
Yeah, and you can carry on and do not
call anyone on earth father, because you have one Father and he is in heaven.
That's right.
You are not to let yourselves be called leaders, because you have one leader and he is the Messiah. The greatest among you must be your servant, for whoever promotes himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be promoted.
And that's the basic instruction here. I've appointed these people as the head of the church. You guys, you've got to be more humble. Don't try and take this position. And Jesus knew that the scribal Pharisees would have their time would come, and that they would have completed the writing down of all the Torah, and that there would be this body of literature that any disciple of Jesus could go to one day in the future, and they could consult the scribal Pharisees of his time in the Talmud, in the Mishnah. It's all there for them. So, and he specifically wanted that those people who were going to write down that oral Torah, he did not lighten their burden at all. He didn't say, he said, I'm not come along to abolish the law or to make things light for them. They've got a heavy burden. And they have to have that heavy burden, because only such people who are so devoted are going to be trustworthy to write down exactly the truth when it comes time to write down the Talmud. Because they're not going to be doing this for fun. You understand? You're not doing this for fun. We're doing this because it's a heavy burden. And we're doing it because we are those who keep the oracles of God. And so we had to keep that heavy burden and write that down. Then he says to his disciples, don't bother about that yourselves. That's not your job to do so. You are going to have an easy yoke. You are going to have an easy burden. It's not going to be difficult for you to shoulder the cross which I have to bear. So, and then he goes on, after saying to his disciples, don't do what they do. The very next thing he does is he criticizes those who act as Pharisees and as scribes and Pharisees. He says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites.
Yeah.
That's literally saying, you who are actors. And he says this after he's instructed his disciples, don't do. Because if you do or try to do, you will simply be actors. So don't be an actor, a hypocrite. That's what the word hypocrite means, and has to mean for a Messianic Hebrew. Because if it doesn't mean hypocrite for a Messianic Hebrew, then the Messianic Hebrews are continuing to carry the hegemony of the Roman Catholic anti-Semitism, which created the European word hypocrite, originally in Greek meaning actor, but they created a different meaning for it out of every other European language other than Greek by twisting the meaning of these verses, specifically to undermine the authority of the true authority of Jesus's church.
Wow. Wow. I love it. Wow. Very interesting.
And he goes on for how many pages? How many woes does he give to the Scribal Pharisees?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, the last one is you snakes, son of snake.
Yeah. So he goes on, and each time he says, Scribal Pharisees, hypocrites. Scribal Pharisee, hypocrites.
Yeah.
Scribal Pharisee, hypocrites. Scribal Pharisee, hypocrites.
Yeah.
So he makes it absolutely clear in the Koine Greek, in the modern Greek too, hypocrite means actors, fakes, fraudsters, people who are playing, in modern English, they would call it cosplay, dressing up in, it's actually a Japanese word, cosplay. But the people who are just dressing up in the cosplay. So he's literally saying, woe to you, Scribal Pharisee cosplay actors.
Wow.
Woe, because you are making things difficult, and you yourselves are not going to do anything about it. Remember, perfect example, we just had a few weeks ago, we had Passover and Easter, and I call it Easter because I want to remind people about the day of yeast, which is the 22nd of Nisan, which is a day of yeast, which is actually what Easter is supposed to be, the day of yeast. When Jesus was, there were two examples. When Judas went to betray Jesus, he went at night to the synagogue and he made a transaction with these people to betray them for 30 pieces of silver on the night of the Sabbath. And then the following Sabbath, they went to Pilate and said, secure the tomb. So they did two transactions on the Sabbath when nobody was watching them. So there's a perfect example of people who are hypocrite Pharisees or Scribal Pharisees. I think in this case, maybe in the Sadducees or the temple priests, but as an example of the kind of person who in public looks like they are observing the Sabbath, but in their own private, or when everybody else is asleep or in the synagogue, they're sneaking off to speak to Pilate and say, secure the tomb, or they're doing a deal with Judas and they're swapping money on the Sabbath. So this is an example of the hypocrite, the actors, people who are just doing it for show. They're just doing it for show. And it's easy to take the first couple of verses, which Jesus says there in chapter 23. I mean, how many times have we said, but we've just got to keep on saying it, Mark. Otherwise, we're never going to get the message out. And this is the whole point of the book, Jesus the Pharisee by Rabbi Harvey Falk, which if you want, you can write to us and we'll send you a copy. Which actually is making it very clear that Jesus was from this scribal Pharisaical tradition, and he didn't require his disciples to continue in this scribal Pharisaical tradition as scribes and Pharisees, and he didn't want them to pretend to be scribal Pharisees. And this is also why Paul rebuked Peter at one point, because Peter withdrew himself and started to behave in a way which was different from how he behaved when he wasn't under observation. And Paul says, you shouldn't have done that, Peter, because you're starting to look like somebody who's acting. And Jesus did not like actors. You should show one face to everybody and not be an actor. So Jesus, but I'm saying that the passage here, it's easy to twist the first part of the meaning given the second part. But you just have to bear in mind, if you are a disciple of Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus is not an idiot. Jesus is not a moron. Jesus is not some kind of twisted, I don't know, like, what would he be? He was not something like a twisted joker that he's going to tell his disciples, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses, so practice and observe everything they tell you to do. That's the beginning. and then undermine everything he said by saying, what a bunch of morons those scribes and Pharisees that I just told you to follow. Ha, ha, ha. Joke's on you, disciples, for following me, because I just told you there to follow them. And then I told you what kind of idiots they are. And I'm sitting here laughing at you. Is Jesus a joker? Is he literally joking with his disciples here, saying, obey them, but they're a bunch of morons. And I want you to obey a bunch of morons. Is that what Jesus is doing?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so you have to look at the verses and say, okay, Jesus can't be a joker. He's not a moron himself. He's not an idiot himself. So what does he mean by saying obey them, and then woe to the scribes and Pharisees hypocrites? And this passage in the middle here, all their deeds are done to be seen by men. They love to broaden their phylacteries and lengthen their tassels. They love the places of honor in the banquets, the chief seats in the synagogues, and they love the greetings in the marketplace and the title rabbi from which they're addressed. Is that how Jesus said it? Because if that's how Jesus said it, then Jesus is a joker. And he's playing a joke on his disciples. Or did Jesus say, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses, and this is the correct interpretation. They sit in the seat of Moses, so do and observe everything they do, but don't practice Orthodox Judaism the way they do, because they don't practice the 7 laws of Noah, which they preach for you, the crowds, and for me, my disciples, the Christians. They have very heavy, burdensome loads, which they lay on mankind's shoulders, and they are not willing to lift a finger to remove them. They will not remove them. They do not have the authority, the will, the power, the spirit to challenge it. Okay? We make a mountain out of a molehill, and we don't have the spirit to challenge this afterwards. This is true about us. This is not a joke. And all of our deeds are done because we are supposed to be on display for all men to see. We are the light unto the nations. We are the nation of priests and prophets for the congregation, which is mankind. And a priest stands up in front of the congregation and is seen by the whole congregation as an example. And you would expect your pastor, your priest, your bishop, you would expect that person to have a higher standard. Sure, you can get divorced, but if your pastor got divorced, that's no good. Sure, you can get married in the Catholic Church, but can your priest get married? Well, you can have sex and have children, but a priest shouldn't even have sex in the Catholic Church. In the Catholic Church, they don't even want their priests to have sex. It's like, whoa, no, I can't imagine a man of God having sex. That's disgusting, right? So the Catholic Church sort of cut that out. You see. So, and they, therefore, are supposed to enjoy the places of honor in the banquets and the chief seats in the synagogues and the greetings in the marketplace and the title of rabbi which they addressed. That is for them. I, Jesus, have appointed that for them because they are on display. They are your priests. They are your pastors. They are the ones who have a higher standard, and you are not to try to live up to that same standard. This is very difficult for Protestants to accept, because Protestants, I should say low church Protestants had a revolution where they said, we don't need any kind of priest or bishop. We all have our own ministry. And that's true. You do have a ministry as deacons. You are a diaconate. And that is it. There is nothing higher than diaconate. That's what Jesus says here when he says, you are, I should probably check. I'm looking at the scriptures here, but I'm not checking the time. Are we doing for time? We're doing all right.
It's only 9 after. You get like 20 minutes.
Oh, I got tons of time. All right. So
18, 17 minutes, something like that.
So I'll go back and read the other page because I'm not looking at the recording page, and I'm looking at the scripture while I'm speaking. So Jesus says to his disciples, but you are not to be called rabbi, not to be called Abbi, father, my father, because Abbi was a title for another kind of if you study the Essenes did not call themselves rabbi, they called themselves Abbi, my father. So you're not supposed to call anybody my father. That's what he says. Don't call anybody your father. You're not saying my father, my father. You're not supposed to go around saying this to people because you have one Father who is in heaven. Interesting enough, you know the word dad comes from Hebrew, dod and dodi. It means my beloved. Dodi, it also means uncle. Dodi is you get daddy from, dad. So that's interesting, the English word dad. A long time ago, the English started using the word dad, specifically because they didn't want to use the word abba or ava or papa, which is another European word which sounds like father in Hebrew. So they called each other dad instead. It's very interesting. It it comes from Hebrew. So you can call each other dad. You're just not allowed to say abi, my father, to even your father. So you can call him your father to other people, but not to say to him, my father, my father. It's a strange way. Nobody would talk to their parents like that, but it's the way that the Essenes used to talk to their teachers. And yet the Catholic Church, for example, have fathers, and they call their priests fathers, don't they? And you are not to be called instructors. This is, I think it's the word, what was the Greek word there? Can you click on that icon? Yeah, the word.
The Greek word. Yeah.
Chapter 10, verse 10, because I don't have the ability to click on the Greek on my browser right now. It's not working.
Instructors, right. Okay. Let me do this real quick.
Can you share it on the screen?
I can, but I'm not in a place here. Give me a second here and let me just do this. Matthew 23:10 it is. Bible Hub, Matthew 23:10 and instructors. So you want to know Greek?
The Greek, yes.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Instructors is kathegeti, which is a leader, teacher, guide, master from a compound of kata and something else.
Cathegetes. I think this is where you get the word cathedral from, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cathegete. So you're not supposed to be calling anybody cathedral, cathegete. Cathedral is the center of the cathegetes, basically. I suppose that's what they changed the name because they were already calling everybody father and said, well, we can't call our bishops cathegetes, so we'll call them bishops instead. But the cathedral where the cathegetes all hung out is still called a cathedral even today. So there you get the word cathegete. So you're not supposed to be calling each other father, and you're not supposed to be using the word cathegete or for the place of the cathedral where the cathegetes hang out. And he also says you are to be called diakonos. That's the word, deacons. That's the word he says for them.
Okay, yeah.
Can you check that out and confirm it with me?
Now, what is it? Say it again. I'm sorry.
Diakonos, deacon. We get the word deacon from this.
I didn't understand. What?
It's verse. We're looking. I'd like you to show, please, if you can. I think it's verse. Is it 12? Let me have a look and see again.
And verse 12 for the.
No. Yeah. So it's verse 11. 11. You are. Yeah. Verse 11 and 12.
Servant.
11. Though.
The greatest among you will be your servant.
And the word servant is diakonos, I believe. Deacon.
Okay. Let me go.
Is that right?
Here. Yeah, I get too many. I got too many things open here. The greatest among servant is diakonos.
There you go, diakonos.
Probably deacon. From the absolute an attendant, waiter, Christian teacher, and pastor.
There you go. So diakonos, deacon, is actually the maximum level that a Christian should be. So a Christian can be a deacon. And I think there are some churches where they realize this. It's Anabaptist churches, really, where they said, oh, okay, so we're not allowed to be anything higher than a deacon. And some Anabaptist churches, they said, all right, then, so we will call our pastors deacon. We won't call them pastor. We won't call them bishop. We won't call them priest. We'll call them deacon and only deacon because that's the maximum title that Jesus allowed us to use. So deacon, diakonos, that's what we're going to use. We're not going to use anything more than that. And God bless them. Yeah, and God bless them. So, that's very nice. That's great. So sometimes I wonder to myself whether, it would be so lovely to be just a deacon and a Noahide, follower of Jesus. Actually, if I had known all of this when I was a secular person, it would have been very, very, very good for my life, because it's extremely difficult for my children, my wife, and my family, especially with the rise in anti-Semitism, to go down this path. It is not easy. And do we even have to anymore? Because we are not the scribes and the Pharisees. Our status, we acknowledge that our status cannot be as high as the status of those generations which came before us. Every subsequent generation of Jews cannot reach the level of holiness and respect and honor that the previous generation of Jews deserves. We can never do that. As time goes by, we are to be respected less and less and less and less. And our ancestors are the ones who get the honor of being the scribes and the Pharisees who sit in the seat of Moses. So why would you try? Why would you want to? Sure. Well, on the Sabbath, live a kosher lifestyle, put on your talit and everything. Don't put on the tzitzit. Put on a kippah if you want to. Wrap yourself in a Jewish Israeli flag if you like, but don't call yourself a Jew. Don't put on the phylacteries, the tefillin. Don't wear the tzitzit. Jesus told you not to. And don't take the chief places in the synagogues. Don't take the chief places of the banquets. Call yourselves deacons. Keep the 7 laws of Noah, and call yourself Hebrews, and call yourself Messianic Hebrews, and enjoy the grace which Hashem has given to you as his people in the Eidah. And leave the Kehillah, because the Kehillah had a specific job and it existed for a specific time. And our time is, frankly speaking, up. It's up. Because we've got 10 minutes left.
You surely know as well as I do, though, it doesn't make any difference which sect you're in, which religion you're in, whichever belief system you're in. There are always people that think they have it all, and they are the ones that know more than you, and that they can be the leaders and they can rise above deaconship or whatever, that they can do all these things because I have studied more than you. I know more than you. God likes me better than you.
Well, let's not disrespect those people who have studied more. I mean, there are always going to be people who studied more. And for example, if you're running NASA, okay, and you want to get a rocket scientist, you're going to want the rocket scientist who has studied more than anybody else, because you want to make sure that your thing is going to work. So we do have to respect the fact that, yes, people who have studied more deserve the job, and the people who haven't studied more don't deserve the job. That's a fact. That's true. On the other hand, you're not going to hire somebody in NASA who says, I've studied more than everybody, I know more than you, and isn't going to listen to anybody else. You want a team player, right? At the same time. Right. That's what we want. So yes, wonderful. If you've studied more than anybody else, Baruch Hashem. Are you a team player? Because if you're a team player, then we can get along. But if you're not a team player, then you're not going to get the job. You're just not going to get the job. So but with regards to those people who are saying they're better, I mean, because in Judaism, we have plenty of people. I will mention no names or locations. I will not mention any names or locations, but we have, because that might be too easy to expose. But we have certain people. There are certain people who apply for the jobs of rabbi, and they will maybe get that job because they are the most educated in Judaism, and turn out to be a rotten rabbi. And when it's time to renew the contract is not renewed because they were just not team players. They were just rotten, nasty people who had studied more and were holier than thou, and nobody was as good as they could be. There was no compassion. There was no pastoral care, if you like, from such people. So, those people are not going to be well respected very long, except by except in the cult, we have to say.
Yeah, I
Cults
agree. Yeah.
do exist. I heard that David Koresh, for example, was horrifically abusive to the people in Waco, and yet still they blindly accepted everything he said. There wouldn't be a
Jim
single
Jones.
Jim Jones. I don't know
Yeah,
him.
Jim Jones. My gosh.
Yeah.
The the people that followed him to death, over 100 people.
Oh my goodness.
That type of thing. It's interesting because those people that rise up and think they're better because they can answer all the questions in their own way and everything, to me, they're actors. They are hypocrites, because if they don't really acknowledge that the other people are also equally good at researching and coming up with things and learning and everything, and like you say, a team player, to me, you're just an actor. You're just a hypocrite.
Absolutely. And we've got a couple of questions here. I think we've just addressed it from Keith in the chat here. He made two questions. One here, I'll put up first here. It says that even Josephus wrote that the rabbinic Jews were not of the tribe of Judah. They were Edomite converts. We'll deal with that in a second. And the other one was about, he has a question about, where does it say to keep the 7 laws of Noah in the New Testament? And you wrote, the answer is Acts 15. Not just Acts 15, but here in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, when he says, do what the Scribal Pharisees tell you, my disciples, to do. And what do we tell you to do? We tell you to keep the 7 laws of Noah. We do not say convert to Orthodox Judaism, get circumcised and keep all the Torah. We don't say that. We say to you, disciples of Jesus, we say, keep the 7 laws of Noah. So right there in that verse, when Jesus says, do what the Scribal Pharisees tell you to do, he has simply endorsed the 7 laws of Noah, because that's what we tell you to do. And he says, do what we tell you to do. And that's what we tell you to do. That's what the Talmud tells the Noahites to do. It tells the Erev Rav to do, tells the Rabble to do, tells the crowds to do, and tells the Jesus disciples to do. There's throughout history, the Jewish people have told the Scribal Pharisees, have told the Christians, all you need to do is keep the 7 laws of Noah. And that's because Jesus told us, told you to obey what we tell you to do. That's where it says the 7 laws are. But also, as Mark put there, in Acts 15, it also says so. We've been through that on this show before. Please, Keith, subscribe, and you'll watch this back shows and get them. Now, this is an important point that Keith brings up here. This is a slight oversimplification. Josephus says clearly that that many people in the Judeans at the time, for example, King Herod, king of the Judeans, okay, and it's translated king of the Jews, but he's king of Judea. He was the king of Judeans, King Herod. Himself was an Edomian. He was an Edomite. And these Edomites were converts, actually Noahites, who were forcibly circumcised by the Hasmonean king Yannius Alexander, who forcibly circumcised them. And this caused a major problem in Judaism, because we had all these people who had simply been circumcised, having been turned into slaves by Yannius Alexander, and then he circumcised them to free them and said, there, I've satisfied the law, where there's this loophole that if you free a slave, that person uncircumcised and become a Jew. And so he thought, I'll just make everybody in Edomia, because he conquered Edomia, which is Edom. He conquered Edom. I'll just make them all into slaves, and then I'll circumcise them and free them, and there they'll all be Jews, and then we won't have an issue. And this caused a massive problem, because none of those people cared the slightest about Judaism, and that is a major problem. Now, many of them were, well, actually, they were scribal. They were scribes. They were Sadducees. They were even chief priests were coming from Edom. They were not even of the priestly line. They were coming from Edomian families. So it was a big mess here. But when you say the rabbinic Jews were not the tribe of Judah, first of all, Josephus never used the phrase rabbinic Jew. So that's a problem number one there, Keith. That's oversimplification number one. He never used the term rabbinic Jew. So it's not true that he said the rabbinic Jews were from the tribe of Edom, although it is true that many rabbinic Jews could be from the tribe of Edom at that time. But the Scribal Pharisees specifically removed ourselves, perush means to be preserved or to be pure from the Edah because of what happened there, Keith. So that's kind of a misunderstanding. But yeah, I can say what it's also another misunderstanding is that the name Judah itself comes from, I'll put that back up again because I'm still talking about it. I've got a few minutes left. The name Judah itself, the tribe of Judah, the place of Judah, comes from Judith, who was a wife of Edom before Judah was even born. Judah was named after Judith and the place of Judah, which existed before Judah was born. So the place Judah was not named after Judah. Judah was named after the place. We know that because Judith, the wife of Edom. So there's another confusion of Jews and Edom. But Edom is anybody who's a follower of Jesus of Nazareth. So I can then say, I accept Jesus of Nazareth as a teacher for the nations, and I promote his ways, and I'm doing the Petachamo podcast. So you can call me Edom if you like, and I'll accept that. That's no problem. And we've been through this before, that he's not hated. But we have really run out of time, haven't we? So we can't go through this anymore today, Keith, but I hope you'll come back and listen to more next time.
And there is Yossi's email address. So if you want to check that out, there you go. All right. We got to go. Thank you, Yossi, so much for
no problem. Everything. I'm surprised we get through so much in these shows, but
I am too. I really am. But we do, and you are a fast talker, but I like it. So I got almost 2 pages of notes this week. So real good, brother. We'll be back next week. Please don't brush us off or anything. Please come back and ask us some questions, and we'll continue on. So all right, Yossi, love you, brother, and we will see you next week. God bless. Have a great
Shalom,
week,
everyone.
everybody.
Take care. Shavuot tov. Bye-bye.
If you missed today's show or want to watch it again or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lambnetwork.tv, where you will find this show and all other live Lamb Show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell somebody about the Messianic Lamb Network.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.